Hello people, the bloody guide's finally here, the beginner's guide to boar thrower. And this guide's a pretty simple, straightforward guide, but I've been delaying it so much because, well, the boar thrower has actually fallen out of hand since Blazing Deserts and the nerf of the throwing weapons. So throwing weapons used to do slightly more damage than this, but that slight damage nerf basically made it a bit worse. But it's still viable build, and I've been experimenting with different ranged weapons and I came to a conclusion that maybe a gunner crossbow thrower hybrid could be better than the boar thrower, but I'll get into it later. So boar thrower is basically a sniper who snipes any archers or high value targets from far. When the enemy line gets close to you, use the throwing mastery and duelist to just DPS the hell out of any enemy that's one tile away from you. And the best backgrounds for it is obviously Hunter, Nomad, Archers are all good if they roll properly, but they're very rare to find. If you can't find any good candidates, try Poachers. Poachers, as I've explained in my previous video, they actually spawn with 47 to 49 range, so they're at least semi-decent when you recruit them, as long as we have talent in the ranged attack. Moving on to leveling up and distributing stats and perks. Stats are really simple because you just gotta level up HP, fatigue and ranged attack. And since you're hiring hunters or poachers or whatever with high ranged attack, as high as you can get is as good as it gets. It's pretty straightforward. I'm probably going to be a little bit controversial with perks, so if you have any arguments or questions, definitely ask me on comment. Anyways, here we go. So students, pretty given. Level 3, a lot of people take Bullseye, but I don't think Bullseye is a very good perk, as there aren't many things you actually want to be sniping behind. You'd rather just kill the thing that you're trying to snipe behind and kill the one behind it. And what are you actually sniping? So main sniping targets, I assume Necromancer and Brigand Marksman with crossbow. Anything with crossbow, in fact. Things with bows and Hexen. Okay, so Necromancer, not a very difficult foe. In early game you avoid them because you can't out DPS the survival, and you don't really want to rely on that lucky chance that you kill with. Even with Bullseye, it'll be something like 20 to 25% chance, probably less, but you don't want to rely on that chance. In mid game you can easily out DPS and you can kill Necromancer pretty easily. The Brigand Marksman and anything with crossbow, their AI is really dumb. They tend to just come out in open field to shoot one of your brothers, so it's actually no problem, you don't even need Bullseye. Bows, well, only bows that will actually outrange your bowman is the one, well, not outrange but have same range, is the one with the Warbow that's just mercenary and desert stalkers. And master archers as well, but bows don't do much damage if you are actually geared up, and all those guys that I've listed except for the mercenary bowmen, they wouldn't appear till late game. So by the time you should have everything geared up, and if you aren't, you shouldn't really be fighting them. What else did I say? Hexens? Yeah, Hexens is only reason I might actually take Bullseye, but I'm not gonna take Bullseye just to get Hex. And only real dangerous Hexen fight is the Witch Hut and any Hexen with the Unhold, because Unhold obviously you can't really out DPS them even with the bow, and you just basically have to hit them every turn, and that's not very realistic. But otherwise they'll be just using a wolf or a Webneck as a shield, and they die pretty quickly to bow shots, so you can pretty easily snipe them. And to be honest, only reason you're sniping Hexens with bow is so that you're gonna end the fight really easily. So rather than Bullseye, I go for something like Executioner or Gifted. That's because I try to fit Gifted in every single build I do, because I just love that permanent stat up. I think it's one of the best perks in the game. And Executioner, any damage you can get, and any hard opponents, enemies like Orc or Chosen, being able to do extra damage to anything with injury is just amazing. For now I'll just say that I'll take Gifted. In level 4, go for Quick Hands. Quick Hand allows you to basically attack twice every turn no matter the circumstances, and you're gonna be using up throwing weapons pretty fast, and you wanna be switching them constantly. and it just makes sense. And I'll probably explain later on, but there's another use for it. And for level 5, go for either bow mastery or throwing mastery, depending on what you have. So if you actually have heavy javelins or just a lot of throwing weapons, I'd go for throwing mastery first. Because in the early to mid game, what are you actually trying to snipe with that extra range? Fatigue wouldn't be a problem for you. So maybe you're trying to snipe that brigand marksman with a bow, but just move 2 tiles forward and shoot him. That's much easier, and your front line's gonna be moving forward anyway, so unless you're trying to kite a lot, I'd definitely go for the throwing mastery first. Because the just extra range, it doesn't actually make sense because you wouldn't have enough ranged attack anyways, and your accuracy will be horrible. So I'd actually favor taking throwing mastery. At level 6, you can either go for footwork or just get the bow mastery. So footwork has also fallen out of favor because of the smoke pots that's been added, and till you're like level 7 or maxed out, you wouldn't really be surrounded with an archer unless you play really recklessly and put your archers forward. But yeah, that's not really gonna happen early to mid game. Maybe late game when you're trying to get that throwing shots off, but then you can just use throwing pots. And remember we took quick hands? Yeah, you actually don't even use up a slot because you're holding throwing weapon and smoke pot on different arms. So you just equip the smoke pot, throw it, and move backwards, save your bros or something like that. So yeah, if you're actually worried about getting surrounded, do take footwork, but I don't really see the point of taking it anymore too much. And nimbles are pretty much given at level 7, and depending on what you wanna do after nimble, you take berserk. Berserk is also pretty much given synergy, and that extra 25% on ignore armor is just huge. At level 10 you would take the killing frenzy. Level 11 you just take the perks that you haven't taken so far, like executioner and bags and belts. Bags and belts is awesome because it removes all the fatigue from the throwing weapons you're carrying. Realistically, you'd be only carrying like 2, and on the other 2 slots you might be carrying smoke bombs or even, I don't know, noble sword or something, so you can actually have some melee capability, which I don't really do. But bags and belts is just handy. It's just minus 16 fatigue from carrying heavy javelins and stuff. And since I'm a lazy player, I just fit in 2 javelins, 1 throwing axe for undead skellies, and 1 smoke pot? Yes, smoke pot. And that's the build. And depending on your preferences, you might want to take recover, but I don't really justify recover. The reason being, by the time you should be like you need to use recover, you should have won the fight. Recover is just like win more perk. You've already won, but you wanna just win fast. And Colossus, you might be wondering why I'm not taking. Colossus, you're investing in health every level up. You'd have something like 80 anyways, and your backliner shouldn't be actually in front line fighting Chosens and stuff. So you don't even need to tank that many hits. 80 HP I believe is enough to just tank all the arrow shots or whatever that might come in your way. So this is the fully damage oriented build. If you're into more of a safety, I'd go for something like this. So just give up the executioner for the footwork. But either ways, it's gonna work pretty fine. Moving on to gear. Gear is pretty straightforward. Let's go to level 11 guy. Okay. So just Sallet helmet, anything that doesn't obstruct your vision. Something like fairy helmet like this is also good. And basically anything that's in between minus 10 fatigue to minus 15-ish. Anything heavier I might not consider using, but whatever, as long as you're getting something like 40 to 50% reduction. And weapon, Warbow, if you can get famed bows, that's just perfect. Throwing weapons, so throwing javelin basically does 45 ignore armor, and the throwing axe has more chance to hit, but really simply put, anything that's not wearing armor, you just want to use throwing axe, and other than that, you just use the throwing heavy javelins. And remember I said how the bow thrower build's fallen out of hand in Blazing Deserts? That's because of the introduction of guns as well as the throwing weapon nerf. So let's have a look at the Warbow, which does 50 to 70 damage, and it can ignore up to 35% of armor. So actual damage, you can ignore up to 24 armor, and that's the damage you might be able to do between 0 to 25. And the current meta is basically ignoring the armor by using something with high armor penetration like hammers. If you compare that to crossbow, which can ignore up to 49 armor, and that's actually not considering the perk, which also adds 20% armor ignoring, which means that crossbow just does much better than bows. And with the light targets, handguns are really good against light targets, and it's AoE, so it just kills better than bows. So I'm kind of giving favor to crossbow gun thrower hybrid build, because the crossbow mastery basically also is a mastery for handguns, which means that you can just use it situationally. And if you invested in backs and belts, you can do something crazy like just carry 2 handguns, and you have 1 quiver and 1 bullet each in the guns, even if you don't bring the gun. So you can just hit twice in a turn, switch back to crossbow or throwing weapons, and use that for the rest of the fight, which is pretty valid strategy. Other than that, but bow is still solid. It's gonna do little worse against chosens and orcs, but in other fights it has better range, so you have much better kiting capability, because with the crossbow you have to reload every turn after you use, but bows you don't. Just being able to shoot once and move back twice, 2 tiles back, and just rinse and repeat, that's quite powerful. Especially if you have more archers in your team, it's definitely gonna do the job. And also paint your helmets red. Red things move 3 times faster. Don't take any risky shots. Just move and relocate into better location. You'll have better chance to hit anyway. In this relatively hard fight with the Chosens and Champions, you can see at the end results that a lot of DPS has been wasted, so one of the archers have almost no damage done. Think carefully about your placements. This is a slightly better fight against orcs. Again, there's a champion in it, but this is pretty small camp, relatively easy. But as you can see, I'm moving the archers backwards so that they don't get flanked by any berserkers, and all the berserkers are trying to flank by ranged, and at the end they finally get to me, but at this point they're heavily damaged and my archers can take care of them. Other than that, just fight goes pretty smoothly with all the berserkers killed without actually damaging my archers. And my shield guys at the top and the bottom is holding off the champion warlord and bunch of orc warriors, so my front line can just kill the bite-sized orc warriors that's scattered everywhere. And that's how you should fight. And one mistake I did make in this fight is my bottom guy doesn't have a shield because I didn't bring extra shield with him. But like I said, this is pretty easy fight. My build's heavily focused on getting away with silly mistakes like that. And last thing to keep in mind, archers wouldn't be as useful till they are actually max level. Well, not exactly max level, but at least reach something like 80 to 90 ranged attack. Just like your frontliners who wouldn't be useful till they get battle forced, archers need that high range attack to basically reliably hit things. And in the earlier levels they will definitely be a bit unreliable, and because the archers are so rare to find, it is recommended that you find them early as possible so you can get to that level, but it is also important that you actually have enough frontline to support the archers. And that's it for the tips. As always, thank you for watching, subscribing, and if you can, please comment more. I want to see more comments. I want to communicate with you guys. I have a bare bones Discord setup, but I'm probably gonna sort it out slightly more till I actually upload. Well, link it onto my videos. But otherwise, thank you for watching. See you next time.